Hello everyone, John here from Vulgar Kitten Studios, and now we're going to go ahead and start setting up our project in order to create this save data system. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to set up a new Unity project, so I'm just going to go ahead and file new project real quick, and I'm going to come into my documents folder, and uh, I'm actually going to make a new folder called tutorial projects. And from now on, whenever whenever I create projects for tutorials, this is where I'm going to go ahead and keep those. So there we go. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new folder and call it JSON, and just select that folder. And we don't need anything. We'll just go ahead and create the project and allow it to import. And also, let me just go ahead and say you will need a local Apache MySQL PHP server, and I actually have a tutorial on how to set up the same server that I'll be using, which is a Cygwin server. Now, if you want to use a MAMP, LAMP, WAMP, or XAMPP server, then feel free to do so. But I'm actually using a self-compiled version of Apache MySQL PHP, and I'm doing all of that through Cygwin. So like I said, I do have a tutorial on how to set that up, but there are a few differences in my system now, so I'm just going to go ahead and open up the installer for Cygwin and just show you what that is. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through all of the stuff and open up the installation wizard. And it's a very subtle difference. Basically, all I have done is in the tutorial when I showed how to set this up, I only installed a couple of PHP packages. The difference now is that I just came into this project, or not this project, but into the installation interface for Cygwin, and just clicked this default button here and just installed everything for PHP. Alright, so you'll probably need to do that too. I'm not sure if all of the required PHP packages for Laravel are covered in the Cygwin series, so it's probably safer just to install every PHP extension as well. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get out of there. Okay. And also, we'll need to go ahead and open up the asset store. We'll be using a free library from Boom Lagoon Studios. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the asset store and let this load. It tends to take a little while, especially if I have something like Camtasia running. Almost there. Alright, so now we're just going to search for JSON. And as a matter of fact, you really could use any JSON library or even write your own JSON parser library for C#, but this is actually optimized for Unity, and I find it extremely easy to use. So just find the Boom Lagoon JSON library and click on that, and just import that into your project. So I'm going to go ahead and import it, and again, this is free, so you don't have to pay for this particular package, and you will probably wind up getting a lot of use out of it if you do go with MySQL as your data saver solution. So I went ahead and opened that up. Also, let me just close out of Visual Studio here. Also, when you first install the project, they're actually using an obsolete function in here. This isn't necessary, but I just don't like seeing these warnings in my debug log. So I'm going to open up Visual Studio and just take care of this right now. So let this open. And all they're doing is using GameObject.active. As of now, the best method to use is setActive. So we'll just set that to false rather than using the enabled function, or the .active function. So we'll go ahead and do that. Alright, and I'll just go ahead and close this out for now. We'll also need a few folders, so I'm going to go ahead and create my resources folder. Resources. And you'll need to make sure that you spell this correctly. because if you don't, then you won't be able to make use of the resources class. And really is probably a better idea to use asset bundles, especially if you have Unity Pro, but I'm trying to do this so that it will work with even free users as well. So I'm going to be using the resources.load method. And I'm going to go ahead and create a folder for my scripts. I'll create one for my scenes. And I'll need a materials folder as well. And that's probably everything that I'm going to need at this point in time. So we'll just go ahead and set up our server environment. So I'm going to open up Cygwin, and I'm going to go cd into my srv www folder, and I'm just going to install a new project for Laravel. Let me just ls lah real quick. So I have a few projects in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use Composer, create project Laravel, and this is coming from Packagist, so you will need to use the slashes there. And I'm going to call this JSON-data. You can call yours whatever you like, but this is going to be the name of the folder. And matter of fact, let me just do Unity underscore JSON. Maybe. No, I'm not even going to put a underscore in there. I'm just going to call it Unity JSON because I'll be creating a new domain for this as well. So Unity JSON is the folder name, and I'm going to use tac prefer distribution, and we'll go ahead and let that run. Now this is going to take a few moments, so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video until it's done, and I'll be right back. Okay, that's completed now. And also, like I said, I use Composer, and I use this with a Cygwin installation. If you're unaware of how to install Cygwin, or not Cygwin, or a Composer, and use that with your current local development environment as an HTTP server, then like I said, I do actually cover that during the Cygwin installation as well. So if you are, again, if you're unaware of how to use Composer, just check out that video. Sorry for rambling, I actually had way too much coffee. Anyway, alright, so now we have Laravel installed. We'll actually need to set that up as a domain in our HTTP server. So I'm going to use Sublime Text, and I'm going to open a file. I'm going to open my etc Apache 2 extra vhost file, and I'm going to come down here to the bottom, and I'm just going to copy my last virtual host, and I'm going to paste that down here, except now I'm going to be calling it Unity JSON instead of JSON. So I'm just going to change everything into Unity JSON, and it'll have to be Unity JSON, Unity JSON, and Unity JSON. And also for the directory rules, we'll need to do this as well. So just make sure you have it named whatever you want and pointed to the correct document root, and give the correct directory rules to that document root. And also, since we're using Laravel, all of our public information, all of our public files are actually in a folder called public. So just point to your Laravel installation folder and the subfolder public for the document root. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we can go ahead and save it out. And we'll also need to create a host directive. So I'm going to go ahead and open a file, go into my hard drive, find my Windows folder, find my System32 folder, System32, wherever it's at, right here, and we'll have to go into drivers, etc, and open up our host file. And in here we'll just create a alias for Unity JSON. Go ahead and save that, and now we can actually restart our server and use that. So I'm going to net stop HTTPD2 net start HTTPD2. Alright, so now we can actually come into a browser. Let me just close this down, and I'm going to go to Unity JSON, well, actually http:// for the first time. And also I have my port set up to listen on 8080 just so that I can use it with Skype. But you probably won't actually have this setting, or if you do, then just go ahead and use that. But if you need more information on how to change the ports of your Apache server, let me know. I'll actually show you how to do that too. But we'll go ahead and, well, not HTTPD, so we need to do http:// unity JSON 8080. Alright, so we can see that we have our default Laravel page. So we know we've installed Laravel successfully. Let's go ahead and create a database for that. So I'm going to come over into phpMyAdmin and go over to users, and I'm going to create a new user, which I will call Unity JSON local host for the host, and I'm just going to use the word password for my password for this tutorial, and I'm going to create a database with the same name and grant all privileges, and just go ahead and create that. So we've created it, and now we can see that we actually have that database here. However, we have no tables. So let's just go ahead and create those tables now. We'll need a users table, and we'll need, let's just do 4 columns, so we'll load that up. We'll need a primary index, so I'm going to call that ID and make that auto increment and set that to primary for the index. We'll need a username, which I'm just going to make a 60 character varchar. Really no reason for it to be 60. And because we're using Laravel and we'll be using the eloquent object relational mapper, we will actually need to create 2 fields called created at, and that needs to be of type datetime, and updated at. These are just required fields that you have to have in your tables that make use of eloquent. So we'll go ahead and save that off, and we'll also need a user underscore data table, which will have an ID, a user ID, a data, and also the created at and updated at fields. So we'll need 5 fields. We'll make the first field an ID integer, set that to auto increment primary key, and we'll need a user ID, which is just going to be an integer. We'll need a data field, which is going to store all of our data, and we'll want to make this of type text. And we'll also need our created at, which is again datetime, and updated at fields. And I'm going to go ahead and save that off. Okay, so now that we have that, let's just go ahead and come back into our text editor. I'm actually going to go into my project, add a folder, and I'm going to add, let me go into my www folder, and I'm going to add that Unity JSON project in here so that I can have access to it in Sublime Text. So the very first thing that we need to do to Laravel is actually connect it to that database. So I'm going to come into app, config, and go into database, and it uses PDO, so you can select whatever driver that you want. But we are using MySQL. If you wanted to use my SQLite or something like that, you could totally do that. PGSQL, all of those drivers, these are all pre-configured settings here in Laravel, so if you want to use a different database, there they are. And because we are using PDO, we don't want to use localhost. We want to use the IP address directly so that scripts are faster. And for the database is called Unity JSON. The username is also Unity JSON, and the password is just password. The cool thing about Laravel is you can actually define a prefix too if you want, but that is kind of outside of the scope of this tutorial, so I won't go into that. We'll go ahead and save, and we'll test that connection. So hopefully if we just refresh, yes, we are still connected. Alright, so let's just go ahead and come back in here, and we'll outline what we actually need. So the first thing that we need to do is come into our user model. Laravel kindly offers us a default user model that we can just edit. So we'll also need to make a protected field called fillable, and in here we need an array of all of the tables that we want to write to in our database. So I'm just going to put everything. You probably wouldn't want to put the ID in there, and as a matter of fact, no, I'm not going to put the ID in there. But we are going to want to write the username and also the created at and updated at fields. And we're also going to need one more model, which I'm going to create a new file and just call that capital data.php. So I'll go ahead and open up PHP, make a class called data, and it is going to extends eloquent. And we'll also need our protected fillable, and we'll need the user ID data created at and updated at. We'll also need to specify the table because Eloquent actually pre-detects your table if it's just like a plural of the class name. So if it were datas, then it would pick it up, but we're using user underscore data, so we'll need to specify that explicitly. So we'll make a protected field called table, which is going to be equal to user underscore data. And that should be all that we need to do. Okay. And also, before I end this video, I'm probably just going to go ahead and set up some default stuff in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to save my scene outright. So I'm going to go ahead and save the scene. And this scene I'll save in scenes and call it main menu. And I'll just take that scene and Control D to duplicate it and call this game, because we'll be working with two scenes. Make sure I'm in my main menu scene, and I'm going to go into build settings and add the current scene. Also drag in the game scene into there as well, so we can use the application.loadLevel class. And I might as well just create my scripts, the scripts that we'll be working with as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and create all of those. So we'll need a C# script called character creator, and let that compile. Go ahead and create another one, which is going to be called data manager. And create another one, which is going to be called player camera. And I'll create another one called player motor. And again, if you have your own scripts for governing the player camera and motor and all of that stuff, feel free to use your own. Like I said, this is by no means final solutions for that kind of stuff. It's just stuff that basically whipped up in like 5 seconds in order to get the movement and camera follow. So it's by no means intuitive or should be used ever. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create another C# script, and I'm going to call this spawn player, and we'll go ahead and let this finish up. And in the materials folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. Let's see, material, which I'm going to call character material, and I'm going to create a couple more. So I'll create another material and just call it red, and obviously change the color to red. And let me duplicate that. I'll change this one to yellow, which is going to be yellow. Need one called blue, which is going to be blue, like so. And I'll also need a green one, so I'm just going to duplicate the yellow one and call that green, and just swap that down to a little dark greenish kind of color there. And for our resources, we're actually going to use default objects, so I'm going to create a 3D object and make this a cube, which I will attach the player motor to. And I'm going to get rid of this box collider, and I'm also going to attach a character controller. Okay, and I believe that is everything that we need right there. So yep, I'm just going to drag this into the resources folder to prefab it and just delete that. So now I'm going to create another 3D object, which is going to be a capsule. And again, I'm just going to get rid of the capsule collider, add in a character controller, and add in, let me just go down to the scripts here and just add in the player motor script right there. And we'll drag that onto our resources like so, and just get rid of it. And create one more 3D object, which is going to be a cylinder. Get rid of his capsule collider and put on our physics character controller, as well as our player motor script. And I'll just go ahead and drag that in there. And also I meant to change the materials on these, so let me just take my cube and capsule and put those back in there. So I'm going to select all of these guys and just drag on the character material right there, so that should stick. Alright, so I will apply all of these prefabs and just delete them. Okay, so that should actually be good enough for our scene setup, and we'll actually get into coding and setting up the UI and everything in later videos. Alright, so thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.